April 18, 1943. The pre-dawn air over Henderson Field hung thick with moisture and the metallic scent of aviation fuel. 16 Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighters sat in formation along the coral runway, their twin Allison V-1710 engines ticking as they cooled in the tropical heat. Inside the cockpits, young American pilots adjusted their oxygen masks and studied folded navigation charts that would guide them across 400 miles of trackless Pacific Ocean. The mission they were about to undertake would become one of the most precisely executed aerial assassinations in military history, a surgical strike born from the marriage of cryptographic intelligence and long-range fighter capability. The events that brought these pilots to this moment began not in the cockpits of fighter planes, but in the sterile rooms where cipher machines clicked and rotated through endless combinations of coded Japanese naval communications. For months, American cryptanalysts working under the classified MAGIC program had been systematically breaking Imperial Navy encryption protocols. Each decoded message revealed fragments of enemy strategy, troop movements, and operational schedules. But on April 13, 1943, the intercept operators at Pearl Harbor decoded something unprecedented: a detailed flight itinerary for Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack and commander-in-chief of the combined fleet. The intelligence was stunning in its precision. Yamamoto would depart Rabaul at precisely 0600 hours on April 18th aboard a Mitsubishi G4M bomber, escorted by 6 Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters. His destination was Balale Airfield on Bougainville Island, where he would conduct a morale inspection of frontline units. The flight path, timing, and even the specific aircraft tail numbers had been transmitted in what Japanese officers believed was unbreakable code. They could not have imagined that their most guarded secrets were being read in real time by American intelligence analysts, working around the clock in reinforced concrete bunkers beneath the Hawaiian sun. In Tokyo, senior naval staff officers reviewed Yamamoto's inspection tour with casual confidence. The admiral's reputation as a brilliant strategist was matched only by his meticulous attention to punctuality, a trait that would prove fateful. Japanese intelligence assessments indicated that no Allied fighter possessed sufficient range to intercept aircraft operating over the central Solomon Islands. The nearest American airbase at Henderson Field lay beyond the combat radius of standard single-engine fighters. Even if the Americans somehow detected the flight, their Grumman F-4F Wildcats and Vought F-4U Corsairs lacked the fuel capacity for extended overwater operations at such distances. The escort of veteran Zero pilots, flying the most maneuverable fighter in the Pacific theater, would easily outclass any attempted interception, or so the calculations indicated. What Japanese planners failed to consider was the unique capabilities of the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. This twin-engine, twin-boom fighter represented a revolutionary approach to long-range escort and interception missions. Each aircraft carried 410 gallons of internal fuel, supplemented by external drop tanks that extended operational range to over 700 miles. The Lightning's unusual configuration, with its pilots seated in a central nacelle between two engine booms, housed devastating firepower concentrated in the nose, one 20mm Hispano cannon, and four 50-caliber Browning machine guns. Unlike wing-mounted weapons that required convergence at specific distances, the P-38's centerline armament delivered focused destruction at any range. The aircraft could cruise at 300 miles per hour at altitudes exceeding 25,000 feet, matching the performance envelope of Japanese bombers while maintaining fuel efficiency impossible in single-engine designs. The intercept mission required navigation precision that pushed 1943 technology to its absolute limits. Without radar guidance or satellite positioning, pilots would rely on dead-reckoning navigation, compass headings adjusted for wind drift, fuel consumption calculations, and split-second timing coordinated across 400 miles of empty ocean. Mission planners at Henderson Field worked through the night of April 17th, calculating wind patterns, fuel loads, and optimal cruise altitudes. The margin for error approached zero. Arrive too early, and the Japanese formation would spot the ambush. Arrive too late, and Yamamoto would reach the protection of Balale's anti-aircraft defenses. The intercept window measured exactly 10 minutes over a specific stretch of jungle coastline. Major John Mitchell, selected to lead the mission, embodied the new generation of American fighter pilots emerging in 1943. Unlike the peacetime aviators who had learned to fly in training fields across Kansas and Texas, Mitchell had mastered his craft in the crucible of aerial combat over Guadalcanal. His logbook recorded encounters with some of Japan's most skilled pilots, men whose training began years before Pearl Harbor, and whose tactical expertise had dominated Pacific skies for 18 months. Mitchell understood that success depended not on individual heroics, but on the systematic application of superior technology, intelligence, and coordinated tactics. The mission he would lead represented everything that American industrial and military innovation could achieve when focused on a single, precisely defined objective. The 16 P-38s selected for Operation Vengeance carried pilots whose combined flight hours represented thousands of training missions across the American heartland. These men had learned formation flying over the wheat fields of Nebraska, gunnery techniques at ranges carved from Nevada desert, and navigation procedures above the endless forests of Montana. Their aircraft had been manufactured in Burbank, California, by teams of engineers and assembly line workers who understood that each rivet, each weld, each precisely machined component would be tested in combat against pilots trained from childhood in the warrior traditions of Imperial Japan. The intersection of American industrial capacity and Japanese military excellence would be decided by factors measured in seconds and degrees of navigation accuracy. As dawn approached on April 18th, ground crews at Henderson Field completed final preparations with the methodical efficiency that characterized American logistics operations throughout the Pacific Theater. Each P-38 received exactly 410 gallons of internal fuel, plus two 165-gallon external tanks, calculated to provide optimal range while maintaining performance margins for combat maneuvering. Armament specialists loaded 150 rounds of 20mm cannon ammunition and 500 rounds per gun for the 450 caliber machine guns, firepower sufficient to destroy multiple enemy aircraft if employed with precision. Radio equipment was tuned to specific frequencies that would allow coordination without revealing American intentions to Japanese monitoring stations scattered across the Solomon Islands. The meteorological conditions on April 18th presented challenges that would test both pilot skill and aircraft capability. Weather reconnaissance indicated scattered cloud formations between 8,000 and 12,000 feet, with occasional thunderstorm cells developing along the flight route. Surface winds varied between 15 and 25 knots, requiring constant navigation adjustments to maintain course accuracy. Visibility fluctuated between excellent and severely restricted, depending on cloud cover and tropical haze. These conditions would demand split-second decision-making from pilots operating at the extreme limits of their aircraft's range, with no margin for navigational errors or extended combat engagements. At precisely 0545 hours, Major Mitchell advanced throttles on his P-38 and began the takeoff roll that would initiate the longest-range fighter intercept mission attempted to that point in aviation history. Behind him, 15 other Lightnings followed at carefully calculated intervals, their twin Allison engines producing the distinctive sound that enemy troops would learn to associate with American air superiority. The formation climbed steadily through humid tropical air, pilots adjusting mixture controls and propeller settings for optimal fuel consumption during the extended cruise to the intercept point. Each aviator carried maps marked with precise navigation checkpoints, alternative routes in case of equipment failure, and emergency procedures for ditching in shark-infested waters hundreds of miles from the nearest rescue vessel. The flight profile calculated for Operation Vengeance required the P-38 formation to maintain an altitude of exactly 50 feet above sea level for the majority of the mission. This extremely low altitude would keep the aircraft below Japanese radar coverage while presenting navigation challenges that pushed pilot skills to their absolute limits. Flying at 50 feet above ocean swells demanded constant attention to altitude control, with wave heights occasionally reaching 30 feet during periodic storms. The psychological pressure of extended low-level flight over water created fatigue factors that mission planners had carefully considered when selecting pilots for the operation. Each aviator possessed documented experience in overwater navigation and low-altitude formation, flying under combat conditions. Fuel consumption monitoring became critical as the formation progressed toward the intercept coordinates. Each pilot continuously calculated remaining fuel against distance traveled, adjusting mixture settings and throttle positions to maximize range while maintaining formation integrity. The external drop tanks would be jettisoned prior to combat engagement, requiring precise timing to ensure sufficient fuel remained for the return journey to Henderson Field. Mathematical errors in fuel planning had already claimed numerous aircraft over the vast distances of Pacific operations, where rescue possibilities remained virtually non-existent for pilots forced to ditch beyond range of friendly vessels. Navigation checkpoints appeared and disappeared beneath the P-38 formation as the mission progressed according to schedule. Isolated atolls emerged from the horizon exactly when predicted by mission planners, confirming that wind calculations and compass headings remained accurate within acceptable margins. The precision of these navigational fixes validated months of training in dead reckoning techniques developed specifically for long-range Pacific operations. Without radio navigation aids or radar guidance, success depended entirely on pilot skill, accurate timepieces, and mathematical calculations verified through repeated training exercises over similar distances. The psychological tension within the formation increased as pilots approached the calculated intercept point. Radio silence was mandatory to avoid detection by Japanese monitoring stations, leaving each aviator isolated within his cockpit with only engine sounds and the endless expanse of tropical ocean. The knowledge that Admiral Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor and symbol of Japanese naval supremacy, might appear at any moment created an atmosphere of focused intensity rarely equaled in military aviation. These pilots understood that their mission transcended normal combat operations, representing a direct strike against the strategic leadership of the Imperial Japanese Navy. At 09:34 hours, exactly as predicted by intelligence analysis, two aircraft formations appeared on the horizon ahead of the American interceptors. The precision of the intelligence breakthrough became immediately apparent. Yamamoto's bomber and its escort were following their published schedule with the punctuality for which the admiral was renowned throughout the Imperial Navy. Major Mitchell identified the formations as one Mitsubishi G4M bomber accompanied by another G4M, escorted by 6 Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters maintaining standard protective positions around the larger aircraft. The moment that American cryptographers had made possible through months of cipher-breaking work was about to unfold in the skies above Bougainville Island. The tactical situation required instant adaptation to combat realities that no amount of mission planning could fully anticipate. The Japanese formation was flying at approximately 4,500 feet altitude, requiring the P-38s to abandon their sea-level approach and execute a high-speed climbing attack. Fuel consumption would increase dramatically during the climb and subsequent combat maneuvering, further tightening the already critical fuel situation for the return journey to Henderson Field. Mitchell divided his formation into two elements. One group would engage the Zero escorts, while 4 aircraft concentrated on the bomber formation containing Admiral Yamamoto. Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber, flying as the primary attack element, began their climbing approach toward the Japanese bombers with the systematic precision that characterized American tactical doctrine in 1943. Their P-38s carried sufficient ammunition for a sustained engagement. But mission success required rapid, decisive action to prevent the Japanese formation from reaching the protection of anti-aircraft defenses surrounding Balal Airfield. The element of surprise, preserved through 4 hours of low-level navigation, would be lost within seconds once the attack commenced. Everything depended on the concentrated firepower of 8 50-caliber machine guns and 2 20mm cannons delivered with surgical accuracy against high-value targets. The opening seconds of combat unfolded with the mechanical precision that American pilots had learned to apply in aerial engagements across the Pacific theater. Lanphier's initial burst from his concentrated nose armament struck the port engine of Yamamoto's bomber, sending streams of coolant and oil across the aircraft's wing. The 20mm cannon shells, each weighing nearly half a pound, tore through aluminum fuselage sections with devastating effect. The bomber's defensive gunners returned fire with 7. "7mm machine guns, but their weapons lacked the range and striking power necessary to effectively engage the heavily armed P-38s, attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. Lieutenant Barber's attack run concentrated on the bomber's starboard engine and wing route, where fuel lines and control cables presented vulnerable targets for the concentrated firepower of his Lightning's armament. His .50 caliber bullets, each projectile weighing nearly 2 ounces and traveling at 2,700 feet per second, systematically destroyed critical aircraft components with the methodical efficiency of an industrial cutting tool. The bomber's structural integrity began to collapse under the sustained assault, with control surfaces separating and fuel streaming from punctured tanks throughout the wing sections. The Japanese escort fighters, caught completely off guard by the appearance of American interceptors at maximum range from any known Allied airbase, attempted to engage the attacking P-38s, but found themselves at a significant tactical disadvantage. The Zero's legendary maneuverability advantages were negated by the Lightning's superior speed and climbing performance. American pilots, trained in energy management tactics developed specifically to counter Japanese fighter characteristics, maintained altitude and speed advantages that prevented the Zeros from engaging effectively. The escort formation, designed to protect against conventional single-engine fighters operating at shorter ranges, was tactically inadequate against the twin-engine interceptors whose performance envelope matched that of the bombers they were protecting. Admiral Yamamoto's aircraft, its port engine now completely destroyed and starboard power plant streaming smoke and coolant, attempted an emergency descent toward the jungle canopy below. The bomber's pilot, displaying the skill and determination characteristic of Imperial Navy aviation, maintained some degree of control despite catastrophic structural damage throughout the aircraft. But the concentrated fire from multiple P-38s had severed primary flight controls and destroyed the hydraulic systems necessary for maneuvering a large bomber under emergency conditions. The aircraft's descent became increasingly steep and uncontrolled as altitude decreased toward the impenetrable jungle canopy of Bougainville Island. The engagement lasted exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds from initial contact to the crash of Yamamoto's bomber into the jungle approximately 6 miles inland from the coastline. The precision and brevity of the combat reflected both the effectiveness of American gunnery training and the devastating impact of concentrated firepower delivered against unarmored aircraft. The second Japanese bomber, carrying staff officers from Yamamoto's headquarters, also fell victim to the lightning attack, crashing into the ocean offshore from the primary engagement area. Of the 8 Japanese aircraft in the formation, only 3 Zero fighters survived to return to their base at Rabaul, their pilots carrying reports of an impossible American intercept mission that should have been beyond the range of any Allied fighter aircraft. The return journey to Henderson Field tested pilot endurance and navigation skills almost as severely as the combat engagement itself. Fuel consumption during the climbing attack and high-speed combat maneuvering had reduced reserve margins to critical levels. Several P-38s were forced to lean their fuel mixtures to dangerous levels, risking engine failure in exchange for extended range capability. The formation maintained radio silence during the return flight, leaving each pilot isolated with fuel gauges indicating consumption rates that approached the mathematical limits of aircraft endurance. The psychological pressure of potential fuel exhaustion over 400 miles of ocean-tested pilot discipline and training in ways that peacetime aviation could never replicate. Navigation during the return flight required the same precision that had guided the formation to the intercept point, but now complicated by fatigue, stress, and the constant awareness of diminishing fuel supplies. The low-level approach necessary to avoid Japanese radar detection demanded sustained concentration from pilots whose adrenaline levels were beginning to subside after the intense combat engagement. Weather conditions, which had remained favorable during the outbound journey, now presented scattered thunderstorm cells that required navigation around storm fronts while maintaining course accuracy toward Henderson Field. At 1440 hours, the surviving P-38s began their approach to Henderson Field, with fuel gauges indicating reserves measured in minutes rather than hours. Ground crews, who had monitored radio frequencies for any indication of mission success or failure, observed the returning formation with intense interest in aircraft configuration and pilot behavior patterns that might indicate combat results. The absence of external fuel tanks confirmed that combat had occurred, but the return of all American aircraft suggested a successful engagement with minimal friendly losses. Only after landing and post-flight debriefing would the full scope of the mission's success become apparent to intelligence officers and command staff. The immediate aftermath of Operation Vengeance demonstrated the strategic impact that precision intelligence could achieve when combined with advanced aircraft technology and highly trained personnel. Within hours of the engagement, Japanese radio communications intercepted by Allied monitoring stations confirmed the loss of Admiral Yamamoto and his staff. The psychological impact on Japanese naval leadership was immediate and profound. The loss of their most respected strategic commander represented a blow to morale that extended far beyond the tactical significance of removing a single individual from the chain of command. Yamamoto's reputation as the architect of Pearl Harbor and the mastermind behind Japanese naval strategy in the Central Pacific made his death a symbolic victory that resonated throughout the Allied forces. The technical achievements demonstrated by Operation Vengeance validated design concepts and operational procedures that would influence fighter aircraft development for the remainder of World War II. The P-38 Lightning's combination of long-range, heavy armament and high-altitude performance proved that twin-engine fighters could successfully execute missions impossible for conventional single-engine aircraft. The precision navigation required for the intercept mission advanced dead reckoning techniques and fuel management procedures that would become standard practice for long-range escort and interceptor operations throughout the Pacific theater. Intelligence analysis following the mission revealed the unprecedented accuracy of American cryptographic capabilities in breaking Japanese naval codes. The MAGIC program's success in decoding Yamamoto's travel itinerary demonstrated that enemy communications security had been fundamentally compromised at the highest levels of Imperial Navy operations. This intelligence breakthrough would continue to provide strategic advantages throughout the remaining years of Pacific combat, allowing American commanders to anticipate Japanese fleet movements and operational plans with remarkable precision. The intersection of cryptographic intelligence and long-range fighter capability had created a new form of warfare that transcended traditional concepts of tactical engagement. The pilots who participated in Operation Vengeance represented the culmination of American aviation training programs that had evolved rapidly since Pearl Harbor. Their ability to execute a precision navigation mission over extreme distances while maintaining formation, integrity, and combat effectiveness demonstrated the success of training methodologies developed specifically for Pacific operations. These aviators had mastered not only the technical skills required for long-range fighter operations, but also the psychological discipline necessary to function effectively under sustained stress conditions far from friendly territory. The loss of Admiral Yamamoto created immediate strategic consequences throughout the Japanese command structure in the Pacific Theater. His replacement, Admiral Minachi Koga, lacked both the strategic vision and the institutional respect that Yamamoto had commanded within the Imperial Navy. The timing of Yamamoto's death, occurring during the critical phase of operations around the Solomon Islands, disrupted Japanese planning at a moment when coordinated strategic leadership was essential for maintaining defensive positions against increasing American pressure throughout the Central Pacific. Within the broader context of Pacific operations, Operation Vengeance marked a turning point in the application of intelligence analysis to tactical operations. The mission demonstrated that strategic intelligence could be converted into immediate tactical advantage through the precise coordination of multiple military capabilities. Cryptographers working in secured facilities thousands of miles from combat zones had provided target identification and scheduling information that enabled fighter pilots to execute one of the most precisely timed intercept missions in aviation history. This integration of intelligence collection, analysis, and tactical application would become a defining characteristic of American military operations for the remainder of the war. The industrial and technological factors that made Operation Vengeance possible reflected the massive expansion of American aviation manufacturing capability that occurred during 1942 and 1943. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning aircraft used in the mission represented the product of design teams, manufacturing engineers, and assembly line workers whose combined efforts had created performance capabilities that exceeded those of any comparable aircraft in service with Allied or Axis air forces. The precision manufacturing techniques required to produce the Lightning's complex twin-engine configuration demonstrated advances in aeronautical engineering that would influence aircraft design principles for decades beyond the end of World War II. The fuel and ammunition logistics necessary to support long-range fighter operations in the Pacific Theater required unprecedented coordination between supply vessels, ground support personnel, and maintenance crews operating under primitive conditions on remote islands. Every gallon of aviation fuel and every round of ammunition used in Operation Vengeance had been transported thousands of miles across submarine-infested waters, then distributed through logistical networks that operated without the infrastructure support available in more developed theaters of operations. The success of such missions depended as much on the efficiency of supply chain management as on pilot skill and aircraft performance. The psychological impact of Yamamoto's death extended throughout both Japanese and American forces engaged in Pacific operations. For Japanese naval personnel, the loss of their most respected commander represented a profound shock to institutional confidence that had sustained Imperial Navy operations since the beginning of the war. Yamamoto's reputation as a strategic genius, whose planning had achieved the tactical surprise at Pearl Harbor, made his death a symbolic defeat that undermined Japanese assumptions about their invulnerability to American retaliation. The precision of the American intercept mission demonstrated capabilities that Japanese intelligence had consistently underestimated. American forces throughout the Pacific Theater viewed the success of Operation Vengeance as validation of their technological and operational superiority over Japanese forces. The mission's success reinforced confidence in American aviation training, aircraft performance, and intelligence capabilities at a critical moment when offensive operations were expanding throughout the Central Pacific. The death of Pearl Harbor's architect provided a sense of retribution that motivated American personnel, while demonstrating that no enemy leader was beyond the reach of Allied forces equipped with advanced technology and accurate intelligence. The broader strategic implications of Operation Vengeance influenced Japanese naval planning for the remainder of the Pacific War. The loss of Yamamoto's strategic leadership occurred at a moment when Japanese forces were facing increasing pressure from American offensive operations throughout the Solomon Islands and Central Pacific. His replacement lacked both the institutional authority and the strategic vision necessary to coordinate effective responses to American naval and aviation superiority that was becoming increasingly apparent in every major engagement. The technical lessons learned from Operation Vengeance influenced American fighter tactics and aircraft development programs throughout the remaining years of World War II. The P-38 Lightning's performance in long-range intercept missions validated design concepts that emphasized range, firepower, and high-altitude performance over the maneuverability characteristics traditionally prioritized in fighter aircraft design. These lessons would influence the development of subsequent American fighter aircraft, including the P-51 Mustang's long-range escort capabilities and the P-47 Thunderbolt's heavy armament configurations. The intelligence methods that made Operation Vengeance possible continued to provide strategic advantages throughout the remainder of Pacific operations. The MAGIC program's success in breaking Japanese naval codes enabled American commanders to anticipate enemy fleet movements, supply operations, and strategic planning with remarkable accuracy. This intelligence advantage, combined with superior industrial production capabilities and advanced aircraft technology, created conditions that would ultimately determine the outcome of Pacific theater operations. The precision timing required for Operation Vengeance demonstrated advances in navigation and coordination techniques that would become standard procedures for complex military operations, requiring the synchronization of multiple units operating at extreme ranges. The mathematical calculations necessary to coordinate aircraft fuel consumption, navigation checkpoints, and intercept timing over 400 miles of ocean-established methodologies that would influence operational planning principles for decades beyond the end of World War II. The human factors demonstrated in Operation Vengeance, pilot endurance, navigation accuracy, and psychological discipline under extreme stress conditions, validated training programs that had been developed rapidly in response to wartime requirements. These pilots had mastered skills that required not only technical proficiency, but also the mental toughness necessary to function effectively during sustained high-stress operations far from friendly territory. Their performance represented the success of American aviation training methodologies that would continue to influence pilot development programs long after the end of hostilities. The legacy of Operation Vengeance extends far beyond the tactical success of eliminating a single enemy commander. The mission demonstrated the potential for precision intelligence to be converted into immediate tactical advantage through the coordinated application of advanced technology, superior training, and innovative operational planning. The intersection of cryptographic analysis, long-range fighter capability, and precision navigation techniques created a new form of warfare that transcended traditional concepts of strategic and tactical operations. As the sun set over Henderson Field on April 18, 1943, the returning P-38 pilots represented more than successful completion of a difficult mission. They embodied the transformation of American military capabilities that had occurred during 18 months of Pacific combat. Their aircraft, their training, their intelligence support, and their operational coordination reflected industrial and technological advances that would ultimately determine the outcome of the Pacific War. The death of Admiral Yamamoto marked not only the elimination of a strategic opponent, but also the demonstration of American capabilities that no enemy commander could ignore or underestimate. The impact of this single mission resonated through strategic planning offices in Tokyo, Washington, and across every major military installation in the Pacific Theater. For Japanese leaders, Operation Vengeance demonstrated that American intelligence and tactical capabilities had evolved to levels that threatened the highest echelons of imperial military command. For American planners, the mission's success validated the integration of advanced technology, precision intelligence, and highly trained personnel in ways that would influence military operations for generations to come. In the quiet moments after landing, as aircraft engines cooled and pilots completed their debriefing procedures, the full significance of what had been accomplished began to emerge. They had reached across 400 miles of enemy-controlled ocean to eliminate the architect of Pearl Harbor with surgical precision. The mission represented the culmination of American industrial, technological, and human capabilities focused on a single, strategically decisive objective. The thunder of 16 P-38 engines had carried more than bullets and determination. They had delivered the message that no enemy leader, regardless of reputation or position, lay beyond the reach of American resolve, backed by superior intelligence and advanced technology. Did this mission represent justice, or simply the calculated application of military force against a strategic target? The answer remains complex, reflecting the moral ambiguities inherent in warfare, where individual lives intersect with strategic necessity. What remains undeniable is the precision, courage, and technical excellence demonstrated by everyone involved. From the cryptographers who broke enemy codes to the pilots who flew into history above the jungles of Bougainville Island. The memory of Operation Vengeance reminds us of the extraordinary capabilities that emerge when intelligence, technology, and human courage converge in service of a greater cause. Those 16 P-38 Lightning fighters carried the hopes and determination of a nation committed to victory through superior preparation, innovative thinking, and unwavering execution under impossible conditions. If this story of precision, courage, and technological excellence resonated with you, please subscribe to ensure you never miss these meticulously researched historical documentaries. Share this video in honor of the pilots, intelligence officers, and support personnel whose dedication and sacrifice preserved the freedom we cherish today. Their legacy deserves to be remembered, studied, and shared with future generations who must understand the price of liberty and the power of American resolve when tested by history's greatest challenges.